Lando Norris had a fantastic Spanish Grand Prix. He nearly led from the front. He had the fastest car on the day and didn't really put a foot wrong. He was just too busy dealing with him. Welcome back to Motorsport 101. It's like when Chris Rock describes Al Gore. You had the most votes. Too bad you lost. Welcome to episode 526 of Motorsport 101. And in this episode, we're going to be looking at the Spanish Grand Prix for 2024. And, well, we got another Lando Norris chase down. And for the second time in the last 4 rounds, it didn't quite work out for him in this instance. Max Verstappen with his 7th win of the season. It really doesn't feel like Max has won 7 Grand Prix this year, but yeah, here he is with a nice point lead of 69 after nearly halfway through the season. Yeah, it's very nice indeed. After 10 races. So you've probably already noticed by now, RJ's not here. He's on the way home from Japan after a double header of Super GT shenanigans and Le Mans. He's had a hell of a week. Before we'd sit him out for a couple of episodes and then get some rest. Replacing him is the smuggest bastard in the history of podcasting. So much so he was too busy celebrating a world championship to actually sit down for his magnum opus of doing a Le Mans review. It's Cameron fucking Buckley. Hello, buddy. Congratulations on the NBA championship, you fake Bostonian.
It's so fake that it was like a 30-minute train ride into Boston to go to the parade and act a fool. It was so good, you know. I'm here. I've got my championship hat on. I've got my Tatum jersey on. Dre has his Lakers jersey on. What do you think about JJ Redick as head coach?
I think it's a glorious day for podcasters that we have made it to the big boy sporting arena that is coaching the beloved Los Angeles Lakers franchise. Honestly, I have no fucking idea how this is going to go.
Well,
I have no idea.
It literally can't go worse than it did with Darvin Ham.
No, the only way is up. I did like the fact during his press conference yesterday that he was asked about, do you want to get rid of any preconceptions? And he just said, I really don't give a fuck in the middle of a live press. And I was like, yep, that sounds like JJ Redick. That is a man who very quickly got off TV and was like, no, give me the hard money. I want to be an NBA coach. A part of me kind of respects that. And now he gets to coach LeBron James, his podcast partner. So, look,
so 10 games into the season, he goes, why do you keep starting Torian Prince to start their podcast?
I want him to marry my daughter, etc. Like, we are the embodiment of a Flacco reel.
So, in summary, dog this. 18-time NBA champions.
Because this is not a visual medium, I cannot show you Cam waving his world champions banner in front of my face with 18 championships on it. You fuck. I don't like you. I'm only wearing this because it's genuinely really hot in West London tonight. It's like 80% humidity and it's 27 degrees. It's
a nice 86 degrees.
It's about the same. Yeah, it's about what you've got over there, but
humidity
also,
ain't too bad. It's actually quite nice.
I also like that in our chat, Jason has described you as the Green Power Ranger with that jersey on. It's like you are basically Tommy Oliver at this point, which I think is quite funny. Rest in peace to great Jason David Frank. We miss you, buddy, but still, you do have a bit. We do have a Power Rangers aesthetic going on. If you're lucky enough to watch these podcasts as we record them,
a little bit of green.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Purple wasn't a very big Power Rangers color, but it does work in this instance. Yes. So I get to be the black one. It's funny. Yes. Walter Jones is my hero.
I'm not touching that.
I can take it there. It's one of my few privileges I get in life. But yes, we're going to talk about the Spanish Grand Prix for the next hour or so. Was that a case of Red Bull winning the Spanish Grand Prix or McLaren losing the Spanish Grand Prix? We'll talk about that in a little bit. We'll talk about what in the ever-loving fuck is going on at Alpine, because they've had a week, to say the least, to break down all the shit that's going on over there. Basically, the entire back half of the show involves Alpine in some capacity. whether it be their power unit supplier, their new guy taking over the team, and their potential late splurge on another driver. All of that in the back half of the show in some way, shape, or form, in some capacity. But first, let's get the general housekeeping out of the way. Places you can find us. You can watch us on YouTube. youtube.com/motorsport101. If you like to listen to your podcasts on there, you can. facebook.com/motorsport101 if you're that way inclined. You can check us out on there. We're on Twitter, Elon Musk's failed business investment, at Dre Harrison101, at cbuckley917.
If any idea shockingly little that narrows it down at this point. I hear the Cybertruck got recalled again.
Again? Wow. Shit.
Yeah, the windshield wiper keeps not working.
Great car, great build quality, as you do. It's like somewhere Polestar's in the background going, my God, this takes the heat off us wonderfully. Elon's fallen on their grenade. It's glorious. But yes, you can follow the podcast at motorsport_101. Or you can check us out on our website, motorsport101.com. We got I've been doing a lot of writing lately, a lot of it. There's written articles on Kimi Antonelli, on this race at the Spanish Grand Prix, IndyCar's Grand Prix of Monterey, aka Laguna Seca, which will be our next episode later on this week. And you can check out my thoughts on that, thoughts on Le Mans, thoughts on Nolan Siegel, which we'll get to later. It's all in there. There's also an Ask Dre that will likely be out by the time that this episode goes live as well. So check out all of that shit if you want to, if you're that way inclined. And of course, if you really like us, you can back us financially on Patreon, patreon.com/motorsport101. $5 gets you early access to all of our content, including some of my written stuff as well. Now I'm going to start putting some of that up on the early access, and that's for anybody at any tier level. So if just throw us a buck if you like some extra writing from me every once in a while, a little bit before everybody else does. All of that is under the $5 tier as well. You can upgrade to the $10 tier as well to get access to the supporters club of our Discord server. And if you're really, really nice as well, you can listen to these episodes live as they're being recorded, as Jason is doing right now. Thanks, Jason, as ever. Oh, one important notice for those who listen to us on SoundCloud. Episodes are no longer going to be uploaded on SoundCloud going forward. I need to point this out because people still like some of our older tracks and things. This is an important announcement. We have moved providers, so we will no longer be on SoundCloud. We are now on Audio Boom. If you're not a fan of listening to us on Apple or Spotify or wherever else you get your podcasts, Audio Boom is now the place you can find us. Just Google Audio Boom Motorsport 101 if you want to listen to us. And you're not a fan of listening to it on Apple or whatever else you can get it. If you're a SoundCloud listener, move to Audio Boom. I promise you, because you're not going to get anything new on SoundCloud going forward. Just wanted to let you guys know of that, the little announcement, just in case you missed that a couple of weeks ago. Right, without further ado, after this, let's get into the 2024 Spanish Grand Prix. This Catalonia race didn't entirely suck, so we'll take that in the grand scheme of things. For Catalonia, I think that's actually a partial dub. But it was another chase-down attempt from McLaren's Lando Norris, as stop us if you've heard this one before. Max Verstappen quickly passed George Russell's brilliant hole shot to take early control of the race. Norris ran 8 laps longer on his soft tyres to try and use the delta to bring himself back into play later on, but Max managed I think it was around an 8-second gap after the final round of pit stops to win by just 2.2 seconds over his McLaren rival for his 7th win of the year and career win number 61 of Max Verstappen's career. So, gents, did Red Bull win this race or did McLaren lose it, Cam?
A little bit of both. The problem remains from last year that even if the Red Bull isn't the fastest car on the day, and they had a very good car in high speed, but not so much in low speed compared to McLaren this week, and the McLaren was that little bit faster over a lap, you need to be 100% perfect. And McLaren was about 98% perfect, but not 100. There was really a couple major flashpoints with this. The biggest one, really, to start off with, was that Lando didn't lead into turn 1. He wasn't even second into turn 1. Max did a little bit of rallying as Norris came over on him into turn 1, and then Russell just shot around the pair of them on the outside. And then Max went to work. He went right around Russell on lap 3 before his tires could overheat in the dirty air and just went to work. Just built himself enough of a safe gap that it was going to take nothing less than perfection from McLaren to run them down. And they were almost there.
I agree with you. When I wrote about this race on the website, I said there were 3 key flashpoints that I think determined this race for McLaren. Flashpoint number 1 was Norris didn't get a great start. It wasn't a terrible start, but Max is very, very good off the line these days. He has been I think it's one of the more underrated facets of Verstappen's game. He's an excellent starter. Like, he doesn't have a bad start very often at all. He beat Norris to turn 1. Yes, Russell did go around the outside. I love that Russell said he took inspiration from Alonso's 2013, that legendary start he had that year to go from 4th to 1st. And he used that to his advantage to take he just took the race in line and swept around the outside of the pair of him, which was really, really nicely done. But Red Bull immediately saw the problem. They didn't want to get stuck behind George in the early going, and the first opportunity he could, start of lap 3, Verstappen overtakes George, great sweeping move to the outside, takes the lead, doesn't really look back. Flashpoint number 2 for me was Norris probably took a little bit too long passing the genuinely quick Mercedes in the second stint of this race when he was behind Russell and Hamilton, because obviously Norris ran long. He ran 8 laps longer than Max did in that first stint. And they said to Norris, are you prepared to be able to overtake Mercedes on track? And Norris said, yeah, sure. And Mercs were difficult, like especially George. I mean, that fantastic fight they had around the first couple of sectors of the lap was great TV.
Yeah, Dre. I mean, Mercedes, their form in Canada wasn't as good as Canada, but they have legitimately leapfrogged Ferrari, who now suddenly look like 4th best, despite upgrades here. Mercedes were quick enough, not so much to go and run with the Red Bulls and the McLarens, but certainly to fight with them and to make it difficult for them. And Norris went for the tire offset as Max continued to build the gap up at the front. He just Russell fought him to the death for that second place. And that amount of time that it took to get past Russell, coupled to the fact that Max would then eke the gap back out after the pit stops, because he would always pit first and take benefit of the fresh tires. Lando would go for the overcut. And then McLaren just weren't as slick as Red Bull in the pit lane. Red Bull's pit crew are still them and delivered Max a 1.9 in the clutch.
Yeah, that was Max's first stop was a 1.9, the fastest pit stop we've seen all season. That was an incredible
superhuman.
Yeah, and the funny thing is that 1.92, which is it's a low 1.9. That's one of I think it's in the top 10 for one of the fastest pit stops we've ever seen in F1 at a 1.92. Incredible stop. I think that's the best of the year so far from Red Bull. To be fair, they did leave the door open a little bit on their second stop with a 2.8, but then Norris had a slow right rear, was a 3.6 stop, and that just added. I mean, McLaren overall lost 1.6 seconds in the pits in a race they lost by 2.2, and that was, for me, the third flashpoint. They left a couple of seconds on the table on in the pit lane, and that was probably the dagger in the end, because it just gave Norris too much to do. And if anything, and I want to praise McLaren for this, because I've had people be critical of McLaren in these scenarios, and I think if you're a glass half empty person, you could very much take it that way. I'm glad that Zach was pissed off. I'm glad that Lando was pissed off saying he fucked it, because he kind of did. I think it would be very harsh to give him a full amount of accountability for not winning this race. I think there's an alternate universe where McLaren could have won the last 4, and they've only got 1, and that's kind of the problem here. And I think the point you're alluding to, Cam, I believe is spot on. You've got to be perfect to beat Max, because Max will not give you any quarter to beat him. You've got to be perfect, and McLaren wasn't quite there this time round.
Yeah, I mean, we saw this last year because the RB19, as invincible as it was in some rounds, there were rounds where Red Bull were open to attack, if not, second quickest. And where Red Bull aren't always the quickest on track, they are just too damn good everywhere else. They can beat you a million different ways because they had no other choice. During Mercedes' reign of terror, they had to hone their pit stops and their strategies and eventually their reliability once they got, away from Renault, who we will talk about soon. McLaren had to be 100% perfect once Max got out in the lead, because once Max gets out in the lead, it takes like an act of God to get him out of it at this point. And McLaren just weren't quite there. And to that effect, in the final stint, Lando was cutting huge chunks out of Max pretty much every lap. GP comes over the radio and tells Max, all right, stop conserving. And he basically cut the lap time deficit to, 1.5 tenths. Nowhere near enough for Lando to catch by the end.
I spoke to a colleague of mine, Alex Kalinauckas, of Autosport, about it. The average point was 0.3 because he wrote a big feature piece about this on Autosport Plus. The average deficit was 0.3 in that final split, but the damage definitely came down in the back half once Max had been told to push. He'd done his job, basically, at this point. And it's frustrating, but McLaren can at least take some solace in the fact that right now there are avenues and genuine outlets when the McLaren is now the fastest car in F1. And that is a huge dub for the McLaren team. This is something that we've not seen from McLaren in probably 12 years. Where
not since the end of 12.
Yeah, a genuine claim that McLaren has the fastest car in Formula One now. And Lando Norris is driving the nuts off that thing. Oscar Piastri was nowhere this weekend. Was poor in qualifying and his race pace wasn't there. Norris was in another postcode compared to Piastri this weekend. And Norris has been the facilitator of this McLaren team for the last 6 races. The last 6 races, 1 win. You got that win in Miami. 4 second places and a 4th. Only Max has scored more points in that same time span. Norris is becoming the number 1 contender in Formula One this year. And that's a big step for him and a big step for McLaren. So you have to give them some credit where it is due. The gap doesn't exist. Norris can give Verstappen a fair shake. And that's a big step in the right direction for Woking. Massively. No doubt about it.
Absolutely.
Yeah. A car in the top 2 each of the last 6 races, because if you include Oscar Piastri as well. So yeah, they're right there.
Yeah, I don't think there's a question. They in terms of the pecking order right now, it's those two. Basically, this weekend it was Max and Lando, and it was everyone else. No one else was even in the same postcode in qualifying. And then, despite all of the trials of the last couple of years, Mercedes seems to finally be getting somewhere under these regulations. And the ones who have kind of been lost in the sauce and all this have been Ferrari. They were nowhere.
That's the one thing that leaps off the page to me. It's Ferrari's in an interesting place in the sense of Ferrari seem to have this fundamental problem with getting their tyres in the right window. Because they've struggled in qualifying recently and struggled by Ferrari standards because they're normally excellent over a lap. And they haven't been in the last few races. And let's be real here. Ferrari had another management problem here. Leclerc had his entire race compromised by contact with Carlos Sainz while Leclerc was trying to save his tyres. And Leclerc has been phenomenal at that this year. And it looks like we're starting to see the first strains between Sainz and Leclerc's relationship at Ferrari as they fight each other. And don't get me wrong, Sainz was put on the wrong strategy, which didn't help him either. The hard tyre was not the way to go at the end of this race.
Yeah, it completely derailed his race and George Russell's race. They put him on the hards. He went nowhere fast, and Mercedes put Lewis on the softs to, as soon as they saw the hard pace, all right, that tire's off the table. Another instance where, again, it's like the Ferrari, you put it on anything but the medium, and the thing just does not work properly.
They're just not the races right now, and it's weird. Ferrari walked into this season as the easy number 2 car in F1 and the one that looked poised to challenge Max, and it's gone the other way. Mercedes, it looks like they've genuinely closed the gap in. Their new front wing is seemingly working well, with the with both their drivers. Hamilton, first podium in over 200 days. It was his first podium since Mexico last year. George, again, wrong strap, but still I think drove a good race for the most part. Ferrari's the ones that are getting left in the cold at the moment. It's very strange how this has happened, and they look like the fourth best team in F1 right now. It's very, very peculiar. I think the honeymoon period of Fred is now over. Like you had something going into this season. You've shown you can win a Grand Prix, definitely, no doubt about that. But McLaren's now a threat. Like, there's no doubt about it. McLaren's where you're supposed to be right now. Like, if you're like 2022, but you can operate fine, then we're cooking something here. But you're not that right now.
No, instead it's, they were legitimately kind of, in this kind of chasm between Red Bull and the rest of the field to start the year. Not a big one. Close enough where you could strike where, we saw it in Australia when Max's car broke. Ferrari was able to pick up a 1-2. At Monaco, and the problem is that Monaco is a huge outlier, they were completely dominant. They ran the field over. Aided by Charles Leclerc's tremendous qualifying form. But this is the track that sets the pecking order. This is the track that's supposed to weed everything out. And here, Ferrari looked not just fourth, but they didn't even really look like they were challenging Mercedes for most of race day.
Leclerc got up to the back of Russell at the end of the race, was probably one lap short of being able to, give
on dead
Russell
hards,
something.
though.
Yeah, on dead hard
Russell
tires.
on dead hards.
And that fight for fourth in the end. And Leclerc on the radio after the race said we were one lap short, and I know exactly where it came from. We'll talk later. I think that says it all, if you're Charles. A couple of the teams I want to talk about before we get into our main Alpine section. Aston Martin, Fernando Alonso lapped on his own track, and oh boy, arse gravy. What the hell was that, Aston Martin? 12th and 14th on merit, no shenanigans, and Alonso lapped on his own backyard. Oh dear, where the hell is this team going?
Aston Martin right now, they couldn't develop away a headache with a bottle of aspirin. Like, they are, like, everything they've brought is just, they just slow. The car is just not fast in really any type of track. We've been to 3 fairly different tracks in a row, and they've not done much. Certainly not at the peaks of last year.
We've been saying this for the last year, where it's every time, Aston Martin talk about upgrades, they came with such a strong car to start 2023 relative to the field.
Second best car in the field.
Second best car in the field, and since then they've been completely left behind by now 4 different teams look faster than them at the moment.
5.
And 5 if you include
Alpine beat the brakes off of them this weekend with what started this year as the worst car in Formula One.
Yeah. Alpine looked like they're the number 5 team in F1 again. It was the second double points finish in a row for them, and the third straight weekend in a row they've scored at least a point. So, the Alpine looks stronger, and Aston Martin look like they've regressed massively, and that is a big problem. And if anything, their embarrassment was probably further spared by RB having their upgrade fail entirely. They had a new rear wing, and it failed in practice. And they just seemingly did not understand how this new upgrade package would work on their car, and they were absolutely nowhere. Ricciardo and Tsunoda both eliminated in Q1. Tsunoda had a broken differential in the race, and then got clocked.
God, that's why he was so slow?
Yeah, apparently he had differential problems. Yeah, and on top of that, got clocked for speeding in the pit lane too, which didn't help, and Ricciardo was nowhere outside of that late charge for checks notes 15th. RB with cheeks in this one, which is rare because they've been the perennial number 5 to 6 team in F1 for most of this season. So hopefully their upgrade.
Williams did. Ugh.
Not enough is being said about Williams being awful this year. I feel like
they are hauntingly bad.
Has everybody forgotten that Williams scored 28 points last year? Or am I missing something? Yeah, they have 2 through 10 rounds this season.
Yeah, and that was Monaco, like the ultimate outlier with an ultimate outlier of, well, everyone pits on the first lap and no one passes anybody.
Yeah, just awful.
There is nothing good here.
Yeah, they've been awful. Albon's arguing with his race engineer. Sargent was 4 tenths off his teammate in qualifying. Was nowhere to be seen again. I mean, fuck it. No wonder James Vowles is low-key trying to get Kimi Antonelli in the car early because Logan Sargent is getting worse by the weekend. And like, you're in IndyCar? You guys want him this bad because he's another American? Are you guys that desperate? Please, you got 29 cars on your grid. You don't have to do this, okay? You don't have to hire him. Hire Louis Foster. We'll talk about him more in our next episode. He's good and British. Sky Sports. There's one for you. Who needs Jamie Chadwick anyway? We don't need fucking turfs on our goddamn hype trains. Anyway, let's talk about Alpine a little bit because this is what I call. Yes, we do. There's a lot of shit to get through here with Alpine. So let's start from the top.
Let's go. The big news came out of other big news in the paddock came out of the Alpine camp this weekend. Jonathan Noble of Autosport reported that the French factory team are considering dropping their own power units for 2026.
Mm-hmm.
And then
stop right there.
Stop there. That is apocalyptic in the context of a factory racing team. And then they summoned him back from the depths. But returning as an advisor to the team, Flavio Briatore. What do you mean, Alpine?
He's 74 years of age now. Where do we even start with this? I mean, let's address the technical side first here for a minute, because I feel like that's more our wheelhouse here. How catastrophically bad do you think things are in this current climate where you are at least even considering the possibility of dropping your own engine or dropping your own power unit program? Things have to be categorically bad. Now, for those who don't know, because I feel like we got to educate some people a little bit on this, there's been an engine freeze in Formula One for the last 3 years. You cannot mass develop your power unit. We had an agreement to freeze development to cut costs when the pandemic started, right? Now, you might remember Otmar Zafnauer, the former team boss of Alpine, around this time last year, saying one of many
former team bosses.
One of many, who said that he reckoned the Alpine power unit was down maybe 30 to 40 horsepower on their respective rivals, and he was pushing for an unfreeze on engines, or at least have the FIA double-check the numbers to see if they could find a way to balance the books. Christian Horner actually kind of backed Otmar when he was asked about it. He was like, well, it doesn't hurt if the FIA wants to check things over and see what wiggle room there is, you know? So, like, there was genuine smoke behind this idea. It never materialized in the end when Otmar made those complaints, but there was at least an eyebrow raise of concern about Alpine's power units retrospective to the field. And, well, we've seen the data on track. Alpine is consistently the worst power unit in the field in terms of raw power, in terms of top speed, in terms of what they're generating. Excellent mid-range torque, but reliability and top end.
The mid-range hasn't been like that since they did the big reset on the engine going into 22. Can I just say, let's not forget, Renault were one of the biggest proponents of the turbo hybrid V6s. And at no point in this 10-year-long engine formula have they had the best engine. No point. The other three have all, at some point, been the class leader in terms of horsepower. Mercedes for a fair amount of it. Ferrari every now and again. 2019, maybe the ill-gotten gains. And then Honda for a portion of 21. And then it's been fairly equal probably the last couple of years. It's more down on the X factors of the power units. Honda's excellent ERS system, Ferrari's excellent power delivery. What has Renault had? An engine so bad that your World Constructors Champion partners abandoned you.
Mm-hmm. And you publicly fell out with them during Drive to Survive's filming in season 1 as well. It was a very public falling out. It was ugly. This was a divorce where it went to court over custody of the kids for several months.
Where all the neighbors heard about it.
Yeah, the whole neighbors heard about it.
Lots of cryptic posts on Facebook.
Yeah, that was a lot of. It was the full Desperate Housewives, man. No, like this was ugly. This was bitchy. It was ugly. It was not a good relationship. Red Bull single-handedly pointed at Renault as the sole reason why they were losing, and to be fair, they were kind of right back then.
Yeah, they got a good power unit, and 3 years in, they won a championship.
Yeah,
and they haven't stopped winning since.
And I read a great piece about this situation from Scott Mitchell-Malm over at the race, and Scott nailed it for me, where he just said, "What is the point of your existence as a factory team if you have enough doubt or lack of confidence in your own power unit that you're even considering the possibility of buddying up with a customer? At that point, what is the point of your existence as a factory team?"
You're not a factory.
No.
You're not a factory. You're a badge. It's not all that different from the Alpine badge rebellion LMP1 from a couple of years ago. I mean, I wasn't here for the Le Mans episode. The less I say about how that race was officiated in the final 2 hours, the better.
No, don't worry. I took coffee for you on that one.
Oh, yeah. But I will say this. Alpine have been proving all the haters, the doubters, and the naysayers categorically correct.
Mm-hmm.
When it comes to every aspect of their engine program, Mechachrome produced or otherwise.
Yeah.
And this is a new engine set, right?
Mm-hmm.
Dre, this is the chance for you to flip the table on everybody.
Yeah.
Where if you nail the 26 engines, you could be the dominant team.
I know enough about journalism to know that rule number 1, if 2 sources tell you what you're thinking is correct, you run that story. And if I know John like I think I do, I'm lucky I can call John a friend at this point. Like, I know John wouldn't run that story unless he was adamant that this was the case, which means there has to be at least some degree of smoke, hopefully not power unit smoke, coming out of Viry in France to know that if there's even a consideration that you're dropping these power units, you might as well shut the whole thing down. That is a categoric failure with your entire department if you're considering throwing the whole thing in the bin. You're a car company. You're supposed to be good at this bit. This is the bit you're supposed to nail. And like you said, you've got a chance with a brand new power unit in 2026 to flip the table, reset, and go again. And that is not for another year and a half. We're a year and a half out from the regulation change, and this story's coming out now? What?
Yeah, and you've given your engine, you're effectively giving your engine division a vote of no confidence.
That's damning. That's appalling. That's catastrophic. That's systemic failure.
Embarrassing. That is embarrassing on every level for a factory. Could you ever consider, at any point in any series, a factory dumping their own engines and picking up a competitor's engines?
It's inconceivable. Like I said, it's an admission of failure. It's frightening. It's just completely
and all the
unacceptable.
all the talk with Andretti was, but you won't have your own engine.
But that's the problem. But that's the problem. If Andretti came into the sport now, they'd be forced to take Alpine's power unit based on manufacturer position. So right now, you could make it would only back up the FIA's own argument that Andretti would be uncompetitive.
That's right. There won't be a Renault power unit because they've got no other customers.
Right now, if you're Andretti, you would beg and plead for a Honda power unit right about now, which I think
bite
next
someone's
in
arm
line.
off for. I don't even know if it'd be Honda. Might be fucking Audi.
It would be Audi. Audi would be, I think, because there'd be a brand new manufacturer. Audi would have to, because Honda would still be supplying the RBs. So Audi would be forced
they'd be supplying. They'll be supplying Aston by that point.
Yes, actually, good point, because it'd be the Red Bull Ford. So I believe it would come down to either Andretti cutting some kind of deal. I know there's a very specific formula the FIA uses to work this out, and I cannot be asked to break out my algebra from my GCSEs from 15 years ago to figure this out. But we know it would probably be either Honda or Audi that would be forced to supply them, given the general rule is whoever supplies the least. Alpine, Audi, or Alpine, Honda. Like, both of those just sound fucking weird.
Alpine, Audi, I'm pretty sure a supporter of the show, Sasha, would burn down at least half of Europe.
He would burn down half of Europe and then himself, like the end of the Da Vinci Code. It would be a glorious self-immolation.
And I would understand.
I get it. I get it.
That is a shocking admission of failure, and just everything wrong with Alpine about everything in this era since the V8 era ended is now culminating in this moment. And now we have to talk about Flavio Briatore.
Right. I mean, first, one last point on this. If you're Alpine, why the fuck are you telling a journalist that shit's on fire? I don't understand what you gain from doing that. I know you build relationships with sources and whatnot. That's how the journalism game works. But I would never fucking admit that in this instance. But here we are. But now we got to talk about Flavio, and I don't even really want to spend too much time on this because it's just so obviously stupid. But we got to talk about it anyway. Like, Alpine.
He's a race fixer.
Why in the cinnamon toast fuck would you bring a race fixer in as a special advisor? What the fuck does Flavio Briatore know about winning a championship team? He has not done that in 18 years. And I'm giving him the generous answer here, in that he has not won a championship in 18 years. The harsh response would be he fucking fixed the race and permanently damaged your racing brand and put the entire sport into disrepute. Flavio Briatore is what people think Abu Dhabi 2021 is. That's him. He's the embodiment of all that race-fixing rage that Team LH thinks Abu Dhabi 2021 is. And he was invited back with open arms by Bruno Faman. And he even doubled down when he was questioned on the hire, saying that we don't care about the past. The only way you can possibly endorse Flavio for a role like this is by embracing the past, because that was the last time he was relevant in Formula One. Like, you're being a hypocrite by proxy, because the last time Flavio got to celebrate any kind of consistent success in this sport was 2006. We've had 4 football World Cups since then. We're about to have 4 Olympic Games since then. What? His knowledge is not relevant. And the damage to your already damaged brand and reputation. Alpine's been one of the biggest laughing stocks in Formula One since this season started. And now you're bringing in Flavio Briatore, thinking he's going to magically cook up some kind of miracle to salvage this horrible season you're having. This horrible 3-4 year period that Alpine's been going through right now. Cam, what the fuck are we doing here?
I don't know what to add, honestly. I don't know how I can follow that up with anything, because you pretty much laid it all out. He fixed a race. He was convicted of fixing a race. He was banned from the sport for fixing a race. You want to direct your Twitter-like farming outrage, you direct it at him.
And that's the wildest thing. His lifetime ban was lifted in 2010. And even then, F1
no one would touch him.
F1 didn't touch him for 14 years after that. What does that tell you? This is Formula One, where they will give technical directors 2, 3, 4 bites at the cherry to get it right with the team. James Key has lived in half the paddock. in the last decade. No one touched Flavio for a decade and a half. And only now has Alpine, in their nadir, since coming back as a factory team in 2016, has decided we need Flavio Briatore's expertise to get us out of this wreckage. After losing 3 team bosses in the last 5 years, after losing Pat Fry, after embarrassingly losing the best young rookie talent you've had in Oscar Piastri since your Academy Open, losing one of the best drivers of all time in Fernando Alonso, in the embarrassment of the Piastri fiasco, and the fact you couldn't even write your own contracts properly. You've lost so many key members of personnel in the last decade, and you think Flavio Briatore is going to solve the problem?
No, I'm not losing them either because they booted Esteban Ocon at the end of the year, who has been consistently the better driver up until basically the news that came out, and suddenly Gasly's beating him. Funny how that works.
To be fair
including
to Gasly,
a whole team orders row in Canada over it.
Yeah, and only then did they have to publicly declare, oh yeah, we're going to give both our drivers equal treatment now. Cool.
Bullshit.
Finally, after multiple incidents.
What is the point of this team? What is the point of this team? Because I've heard the notion in the past that Alpine and Renault don't care. Well, if they didn't care, they wouldn't be burning through staff like this.
They would have sold their arse and quit by now, because when the going gets tough, Alpine and Renault are the first to get the fuck out of there. They've always been.
They have been for 25 years.
They've always been the first team to cut their losses and bail the moment shit hits the fan. They've done it multiple times.
They did it when they were winning championships in the mid-90s.
Yeah, they did it in the 2000s when the race fixing scandal happened. And then, they only just came back this time again in 2015 in the last decade, and they had to rebrand away from Renault because the Renault name was too toxic.
They lost their talisman in Daniel Ricciardo, who dropped a Red Bull deal to go there.
Who's never been the same driver since.
Who's never been the same driver since that 2020 season. What is the point of a factory team with no aspirations to win championships? Is my question.
We'll get to the last major point because they're making a play for Carlos Sainz, and we'll talk about it a little bit more in a minute. But if they don't get Carlos, and I think there's every chance Carlos Sainz says no to this shit show. They're fighting between Jack Doohan and Mick Schumacher for their second driver seat. A factory team is considering putting Jack Doohan in an F1 car next year, who was mid in Formula 2.
Yeah, guy was mid in Formula 2. Mick, I mean, you could very easily argue he got the raw deal at Haas, but probably not the most inspired choice, although I'd love to see him get another shot in F1.
I'd love to see him get a proper go, but I can to this day,
not with this team.
Yeah, I was going to say, to be fair to Haas, there was a valid reason to get rid of Mick. The crash damage when you're a lower end team does become more of a factor. That's understandable. But
tell that to their drivers that they've hired since.
Yeah, and then you bring in Kevin Magnussen.
Well, Kevin Magnussen was already there, but man, been burning through cars.
Mm-hmm.
It feels like they are a waste of factory money. They're a waste of French taxpayer dollars.
And Renault already had to get bailed out by the French government a couple of years ago to the tune of, I think it was $5 billion.
It's going so great for them.
Macron's like, well, we'll cut you the check as long as you don't get rid of the 15,000 jobs from here. Fire them from Nissan side of the company instead. I mean, shit. I don't understand what Alpine is doing. On a top-down management level, they are the messiest team in Formula One right now. And I think if it wasn't for the blunders and calamitous news to come out from bigger teams or the sport as a whole in 2024, I think there'd be a lot more people talking about what a catastrophic failure this season has been for Alpine so far. Question, Cam, before we move on real quick. What in the Alpine factory unit as a team is going well? I'll wait. Take your time.
Their aerodynamics department, which seems to be the only good part of the car.
You mean the department that Dirk De Beer handed his notice in at the start of the season, yeah?
Yeah, that one. Because, I mean, on an aero-dependent track with a shit engine, that on a car that's still not at the minimum weight limit, as far as we know, I mean, they were best of the rest behind Ferrari. That's it. The engine is awful. Gasly and Ocon are at each other's throats. Ocon is out at the end of the season. The whole management stack is garbage. The livery sucks.
They're rotating chassis.
I bet the coffee in the
weekend.
shop sucks. I bet the snacks in their vending machines are mid.
Stale
They got the store brand chips. They don't even have the Utz or the Lays.
Oh, they're using American cheese.
They got the gum that dies after like 5 chews.
Oh, just yeah. You sound like a white version of Charles Barkley talking about the Phoenix Suns right now. Oh, the cheese is cold.
Take the Alpine to Galveston with all that dirty water.
You can park right up the front. You can walk right in there. I mean, the other relevant part of the Alpine...
It doesn't even sound cool.
No.
Shitty race cars, sometimes they even sound cool. The car doesn't even sound cool.
No.
Doesn't have that off-throttle brap that the Honda does.
And yet, despite all of this, I think they've just become the favourites in the Carlos Sainz race, because we found out again via Autosport, a scoop a couple of days ago on Monday, Alpine's officially entered the race for Carlos Sainz. Apparently, Briatore's first piece of advice when he got through the door at Alpine was, go get the best driver available. And...
oh, God, he actually might be good for this team after all. What does that say about everyone else?
God help us. I mean, apparently that is a huge, startling undersight that we didn't spot here, that, you know, a genuinely good race-winning Formula One driver is on the board, and you have the best, you arguably have the best tools to bring him in compared to Audi and Williams, and you haven't made a play for Carlos Sainz yet? Why?
The problem, I mean, the good thing for Alpine is that even as atrocious as they are this year, they are easily the best of the 3 teams that could go and get Sainz, at least for now, on current form. Because the other is Sauber, who have yet to put a point on the board, and while they are still never the worst team in F1, they're also not good enough to score points on merit, not even close. Hey, at least their pit stops are under 18 seconds now. Consistently.
It's a plus. Look at that.
And then there's Williams, who have just regressed back to the mean of being the back markers and the not especially close back markers of Formula One, because this car lacks the legitimate X factors of the previous 2, where the last 2 were so good on high-speed circuits that they could go and give some of the higher midfield a bloody nose, because the car is so quick in a straight line. That is no longer the case for Williams. So Alpine can present the best car on current form to Carlos, but what the fuck else going forward do they have? Because if they're not going to be a factory for 26, then that shifts the appeal over to Sauber, who will be that factory Audi team. And if you're a race-winning, podium-capable F1 driver on the regular, you want factory money. You want a team that can go somewhere.
Here's how I see it. I think you could make a viable argument for all 3 teams here. Genuinely. Even Williams. I think if you're Williams, the big pull is, 1, do you have faith in James Vowles? And 2, do you think the Mercedes power unit will be a winner like it was in 2014? If you do, being a Williams custom, which a lot of people do.
Early talk is that Mercedes 2026 power unit is probably going to be very, very good, as it was in 14, where that engine was a verified destroyer of worlds.
And if that's the case, given that Williams did a very good job of nailing the 2014 regulation set and was immediately great overnight, it's not a bad gamble if you think that Mercedes are going to have the best power unit in 2026. So yeah, I think a lot of people have laughed Williams out of the room here. I don't think that that's quite right. I think there is a path where Williams could be very good in 26. But that and Audi have the same problem. You're effectively giving up a year of your career right now, because both them and the Sauber team, which will eventually be Audi in 2026, is cheeks at the moment. they're the two worst teams in Formula One. You're 29, going on 30, entering your prime. You don't want to be tossing a year of your career out into the garbage right now. I can't see a good world
choice.
Or
I don't think Alpine are particularly good either.
But at least Alpine are starting out in a good position. They're in a better position now than they were. They're in a lot better place, at least on raw speed and pace alone right now than the other two teams in this conversation. And Alpine looks like they're drifting back towards where they were last year, relative to the field. But Alpine is a management hot mess.
And the problem is, this is the third year of this regulation set, and they started off the year with the worst car in F1. They're not immune to catastrophic car screw-ups.
The problem is they still might be the best option on the board here.
There's no good option, is my point.
Yeah.
Not on current form. And the thing with Williams, yes, but also this is not the Williams of 10 years ago where a lot of people just point to the Mercedes power unit. There's also in 2014 the fact that the exhaust blowing, which Williams always had issues with all 3 years it was there, was banned outright.
Mm-hmm.
And suddenly they had a very, very good chassis underneath them. This is not the Williams of then. Not even close.
How much of Williams' coffee did he give to Carlos Sainz when they were first talking about a potential deal here? Because I know James Charles doesn't drink coffee. And he's got a very seductive voice.
He called up the guy from Breaking Bad with the coffee machine that made Walt question why they were making meth. That'd be real good coffee.
That'd be some real fucking good coffee. Yeah.
Because and then there's Sauber, who are just... There is nothing good about Sauber right now, and you really have to hope that the Audi dollars start showing some change soon. Because this is now we're now 2.5 years into Sauber basically being nowhere once everyone else got their car weight down in 22.
Why the fuck haven't Audi, who now owns Sauber fully outright, started interfering now? Like, basically bought Kick out of the deal, told Kick to fuck off. Make it the Audi team now with what you've got as a power unit. Because Ferrari's not a terrible power unit by any stretch, and just say, fuck it, we're taking over now. What are you waiting for 26 here for? You've got more than enough... Like, Andrea Seidel walked through the door at Alfa Romeo when it was still Alfa Romeo, when he became CEO of the team, and immediately walked in there and said, guys, we need more resources. I can tell you this right here, right now. Like, that should have been alarm bells being sent to Audi to basically say, what the fuck are we doing here?
Dre, their best finish of the year was 11th with Zhou in Bahrain. Since then, they've had nothing better than 13th.
What are we doing here?
It's just so mid. It's not the worst car in F1, but it's incredibly unremarkable.
It's close. It's close. Like you said, there is no good option here, which is wild for a Formula One race winner and guy that's finished in the top 5 in the championship. That the best option on the board is probably Alpine here. Because Audi is going to take time to hit the ground running if they're going to wait until 2026 to fully take over this team. And it's rare that a brand new team is going to be great straight away. He's
waiting until, I'd say, at a minimum, if he picks one of the other two besides Alpine, he's probably waiting age 32 or 33 season to be consistently scoring points. There's no good outcome here.
There's no good option here. I would still probably take Alpine if somebody put a gun to my head right now, but none of this is good. And it says a lot about the state of the field. This is the best that Carlos Sainz could get, and only really because Flavio Briatore had to point out the fucking obvious as to, hang on, you've lost an excellent driver. There's an excellent driver available on the market right now. Why haven't you made a bid on him yet? Like, hello? Like, what are you waiting for here? It's bizarre to me. If you had to choose, Cam, where you going if you're Carlos? For me, it's Alpine. And I'd almost go as far to say it's a no-brainer you're taking Alpine.
Well, it would only go better than it did the last time over at Team Enstone, given Nico Hulkenberg put him through the ringer.
You ain't wrong.
Probably. Well, I'd probably look at Audi and say, hey, you start pumping money into that team tomorrow and I'll drive for you. If not, it's probably Alpine. Because if Audi are serious about winning, and I know Audi from their time in sports cars, if they're serious about winning, they need to step it the fuck up.
Now,
they need to start pumping money into Sauber.
What are you waiting for? You own this team. You own 100% of this team.
You can't have a 5-year plan here.
No. You're Audi.
The whole thing with Alpine was trying to do a 5-year plan of trying to win a championship on 85% of the budget of Red Bull and Mercedes and Ferrari.
Never going to happen.
Look how well that turned out.
Never going to happen. That was always a pipe dream. Like, that was never going to fucking happen. So, no, like, you've got to do something different here. You know, so, like, again, I don't know what the fuck Audi's waiting for, personally. But hey, if I'm Carlos, I'd probably go to Alpine. Good luck to him, if that's your best option. But, man, if that's your best option, then, boy, oh boy, none of this is good. Formula One is in the middle of a triple header. Its next round is Austria this weekend. We've got the British Grand Prix the weekend after that. You know, the halfway point of the season, by the time we get to that Silverstone triple header, we'll be back. F1 Rush to talk about all things Austria this time next week. But yeah, we'll be back with a brand new episode talking about IndyCar. We're catching up with a lot of the shit that's gone down in IndyCar over the last couple of weeks. We didn't do a Road America episode for Le Mans related reasons, but we'll catch up with that. Road America, the Grand Prix of Monterey at Laguna Seca, and everything you've missed in the most chaotic racing series this week. But until then, I've been Dre Harrison, he's been Cameron Buckley, and until next time, thank you very much for listening, and we'll catch you guys soon. Sayonara. Put the fucking banner down. Put it down.
Never. Banner 19 loading.